Here at Antioch, we define a disciple as one who follows the ways of Jesus. We are currently in a sermon series called Rhythms of a Disciple. Right now, we are focusing in on how to listen and discern God's voice. Throughout this series, you'll be able to find several resources in the lobby, including our Discipleship Cube, which is a tool to help you engage in foundational discipleship practices. These resources are available, some for free and some to purchase, to help equip you in your daily disciplines as you grow in the rhythms of a disciple.
I thought I'd just kickstart us right off the bat with a question I'd like for all of you to answer in your mind. You ready? Here we go. If you had to summarize Jesus and put him into one word, what word would you choose to describe Jesus? Like I said, in your minds. Y'all have loud minds. Y'all have very loud minds here in Norman, all right? I like that. Now, I was with my friend Bill in California and not too long ago, and he asked me this question. And he told me he was mentored by a man named Dallas Willard. Now, if you know who Dallas Willard is, he's a former pastor, author, philosopher at USC who's since gone to be with the Lord. Very respected man across the world. And he mentored Bill for about 15 years, and he asked Bill this question, and Bill said it just messed with him. So he said, I just thought I'd mess with you, Carl. And so this morning I thought I'd come and just mess with all of you and just give you a chance to answer this question and let you mull on it a little bit while we get started in this sermon together, because we're going to jump into the story in Judges chapter 6 about a man by the name of Gideon who had his own opportunity to give God a name. Now, if you don't know the story of Gideon, Gideon was an Israelite. So that means he grew up like in the church. He was like there every time the door opened. He would have been in the youth group. He would have gone through Torch on Sunday mornings. He would have been on your mission trips. He served with your kids, and he tithes every week. Like, he is Israelite of Israelite. He's all in. Now, just like Gideon, we all have an enemy. Unlike us, though, Gideon's enemy would come and they would terrorize their villages. They would steal all their food and just rob the people of their confidence in God. So when we actually find Gideon, we find a farmer who's doing his work in a basement. Farmers don't do work in basements. The only reason you would do that is if you were showing us a lesson, and that is this. Gideon's been to church so much, he knows so much up here. But when push comes to shove, he doesn't know how to experience God here. So as a result, when the tension rises, he is having to hide in a basement. Doesn't make him a bad person. We actually probably could relate to this a lot, because we too, if you've been around a while, know a lot about God here. It doesn't mean we know how to operationalize and meet with God here in the seconds of our day, throughout the day, okay? So here's what happens. A visitor comes to meet with Gideon. A visitor comes. Now, if you're a Bible reader, it says angel of the Lord. But Gideon doesn't seem to know it was an angel that came. He just knows some visitor has shown up, and the visitor has called him a mighty man of valor. So Gideon corrects him, lets him know, hey, I'm a farmer in a basement, and I don't really see myself that way, and I don't think I'm going to do all the things you're telling me I'm going to do. But tell you what, if you can show me some sign, then maybe I'll believe you. In the meantime, I'm going to go make your dinner. So he goes back and he pops some, Hot Pockets in the microwave. He comes back and he shows up, and that's where we pick up the story in Judges chapter 6, verse 20. It says, the angel of God said to him, take the meat and unleavened cakes and put them on this rock and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord reached out the tip of the staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes, and fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes, and the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. I love this next part. Then Gideon perceived it was the angel of the Lord. And Gideon said, oh, help me, Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But the Lord said to him, peace be to you. Do not fear, for you shall not die. So Gideon learned in Vacation Bible School, you see God face to face, you die. And he is scared that this is what is about to become his reality. Now notice it says here on the last part of the story, it says, I've seen the angel of the Lord face to face, but the Lord said to him. If you have an open Bible, it said the angel. A lot of times it says the angel of the Lord. It references the Lord himself. So he is having an encounter with the presence of God, doesn't even really know it until this moment. And now he's afraid he's going to die. And in this moment, he gets to pick one word to describe his God. What would you choose? Like I would probably say, God, my encourager. He called me mighty man of valor. The God who did not assassinate me when he could, whatever word that is. But look what he does in verse 24. Then Gideon built an altar to the Lord, and he called it what? If you have a Hebrew Bible, I'm sure you all do this morning, then that's what it would say. It would say Jehovah Shalom. And help me out, what does shalom mean to us? Peace is what most of us think of, but actually it's a little deeper than that. The idea of shalom is more than just peace. It's actually wholeness, health, life, when everything comes together. Like if you have a safe or a vault and you have to put in a code and all the gears are moving and then click, it works. And in the same way, when you have shalom, your body, your relationships, your mind, your spirit, your soul are lined up in such a way water could flow all through them. And from your innermost being would flow rivers of living water. So this is what shalom is, which is why if you're speaking to a Jewish person, I have a rabbi in Waco that's like a friend and a mentor to me. We met this week. Most of his emails, shalom, Carl. That's where he's coming from. He's living off this mentality of shalom, okay? Now, but you have to notice something about what you just read. Gideon did not say, whew, I got peace from God. Look at verse 24 again. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it, the Lord is peace. To this day, it still stands. So he didn't say, I got peace from God. He said, I got God. And he gave me peace because that's who he is. Meaning the rest and the safety he is having right now is not a feeling he is reaching for. It is a person he is attaching to. And this is a drastic difference, okay? And this is what leads me back to that question I asked you at the beginning of our time. So what word would you choose if you only had one word to describe Jesus? What would it be? Now, the brown nosers in the room are like, well, I was thinking peace. Okay? And for all the rest of us, oftentimes, maybe you did what I did. When I was asked this question, I just thought, what's the answer I can always say and not be wrong? Right? Because a lot of times we get asked these questions, we're like, it doesn't matter what I say. It's going to be wrong. So why do I even play this game, right? So I just thought I'd use the Christian cheat word. What's that? Love. Yeah, love, because I can't go wrong with that. So I said, Bill, I'm choosing love. And he laughed, and he's like, you can't go wrong with love. That's just not how Dallas answered the question. He said, Carl, here's how Dallas answered the question. Relaxed. What do you think about that? Now, by nature, I am the opposite of relaxed. So if this is the word we're choosing, you are telling me that there could not be a more opposite definition of who Carl and Jesus are than this moment. Like I'm opposite of Jesus, this is our word that we're choosing. And then stories of the gospel started to flood my mind where I didn't see Jesus being very relaxed. When sweat is falling off of your brow like drops of blood, that doesn't seem relaxed to me. When you're turning tables over in temples, that doesn't seem relaxed to me. So now I had a crisis of faith, like, I trust Dallas Willard, but this is a little weird. So I had to go to the scriptures to be like, is this true or not? And as I looked through the Gospels, I began to see that it could not be denied that Jesus just lived at ease throughout his ministry. Let me give you some examples. It's time to launch his public ministry. And he doesn't rush out and start a media campaign. He's unhurried and goes to the desert to fast and to pray for 40 days. His family rebukes him for the ministry that he's doing. And he doesn't react and come at them in their emotion. He just calmly sets a boundary. Or what about the time when he's in a small boat? They're caught in a life-threatening storm. Disciples are panicking while Jesus is what? Yeah, napping. Have you ever noticed how many times Jesus was interrupted? C.S. Lewis says, you can tell the measure of a man by how he responds when he is interrupted. And that is why I hate C.S. Lewis. My wife will tell you this is my weakest place if my discipleship to Jesus is when I get her interrupted. All right? What about the time when he sees loan sharks that are like disrupting his father's house and turning it to a marketplace? I always saw it like he ran in there and was kicking tables, but the scriptures actually say he sat down, he took a piece of rope, and he started to wield the whip he would use. So he has some time to sit there and to think before he does do some business. Religious scholars gang up on him, asking him trick questions. Now, he doesn't do what I do, which is get defensive or, react. He just kneels down in the dirt. We don't know what he's writing or what he's thinking. But then all of a sudden he asks a question that shifts the atmosphere. Because he was not attuning to his atmosphere. He was attuning to heaven and bringing that atmosphere wherever he went. Now, my contrarians out there will be like, yeah, but Jesus experienced some very unrelaxed emotions. Anger, grief, anguish. And you would be right. I didn't say he didn't experience those emotions. What I said is that Jesus showed us that when he would go through crisis or pain, he knew how not to let those be what drove him, but to interact with his Father and walk in the presence of God. This is why this is necessary. Here we are, part 4 of our series, Rhythms of a Disciple. And we've been talking about what does it mean to listen. And Pastor Clarence walked us through like Jacob's ladder, where Jacob didn't know that God's presence was there, and it was. And heaven is coming to earth. How do we in those moments make this something we live in the seconds of our day? Like today at 2:53 p.m., how do you live in this? We can all live in it right now. How do you live in it at about 6:59 p.m.? Like by that time, if you did a quiet time today, it's like 12 hours old. So how do you live in that moment? And how do you live in it when your world spins out of control? Okay? So, now that I've been talking about all this peace, don't y'all just feel peaceful? If you're like me, then you are having the opposite effect. Someone tells me to be peaceful and not stress out, that stresses me out. It's great. Now I've got to worry for you too. You just sit over there and you do nothing, and I'll do the work for both of us, okay? So help me out. I want you to pull your finger up. Point to the person in the room that you think is the most chill person you know. Go. Do y'all notice that nobody's pointing at me? Like I'm the preacher. Like I'm paid for this stuff. Nobody's pointing at me. You know why? Because this is the amount of people in my life who have defined me as chill. In 48 years of life, nobody has said, when I think of Carl, I think of one word, chill. That's not the word that gets used. You know how I know that? You can tell what people think of you by the types of books they recommend that you read. Right? Husbands, you felt this, like your wife's like, I just kind of thought you should read, right? We've all felt this. Like, I was asking Brian in the last service if y'all have a place, boxes where like you can put stuff for all the people who work on staff here. The amount of times that John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, has fallen into one of my boxes, about 12. First one time that happened was my wife, Blair, gave me that book, okay? Great little red book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Great title. And she gave me this book, and she said, Carl, this guy stands in the longest line at the grocery store just to practice patience. And I was like, that's because he's a psycho. And I gave it right back to her. You have to understand, my wife and I, the way we handle life, our MOs are very different. 25 years of marriage, 4 kids, but very different. We see this in traffic all the time. If we come up to a red light, there could be 112 cars in line 1. And 1 car in line 2. Blair is content to be 113th in line. And I am sitting there looking at lane 2 going, oh God, we're going to sit through 3 red lights. We could be home in 48 seconds if she just hit that and then switch back over to that line. Like I just see it in my head. I live in an efficient world. And Blair's like, hey, if we miss the light, just more time to listen to our true crime podcast. And more time on Boxer, whatever that is. And so I just can't imagine a world that enjoys that much relaxation. I don't live that way, okay? And then you have Paul. He comes along in Philippians chapter 4. Help me, Bible readers, because he tells us, do not be anxious about. To which I respond, that's because Paul did not have children. We were at Life Group a few weeks ago, and Blair said, everybody in Life Group has like 4 kids, and she's like, why did we do that? The amount of people that can mess up my day every day is so vast. We should have just chosen one. They could go to college in Australia. That way we live on opposite sides of the world. We never know their problems. Like, it'd be a different world. But this is a different type of life that we seem to be finding in Gideon, that we seem to be finding in Jesus. On top of all of these things, though, that I'm describing, our culture, our world, it's running faster and faster. Why? Because we're hoping faster and faster will produce more efficiency and get us into line 2. And therefore, we'll have more peace. Yet somehow, for all these advancements in technology we're experiencing, the World Health Organization has recently stated that the epidemic of the 21st century is anxiety and stress. So, what do you do? I went back to Judges 6, and I've read this story a lot. I preached this story a lot. When I was a youth pastor, I preached this all the time to teenagers about identity and how God sees you and all those things. I had never noticed the verses before that. I guess my eyes went straight to what I'd always read. But right before we get to the Gideon part, the verses right before that, verse 7 through 10, say this. When the Israelites cried to the Lord on account of the Midianites, their enemy, the Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites, and he said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt, and I brought you out of the house of slavery. I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not pay reverence to the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live, but you've not given heed to my voice. In other words, I have a history of showing up in your world of impossibilities and doing the miraculous. But you are surrounded by these Amorites, and you're going to be tempted to want to think like they think and begin to attune to their emotions and the way they live as opposed to attuning to God. And you're going to want to go to the lesser than, the distraction, the idol. But this is who I am, and you can trust me, you're just going to have to be relaxed in the process. When you experience sleeplessness, tragedy, the business deal is sinking, the financial strain's going up, and the tensions at our lunch table or in our sports team are increasing. How do we actually do this? So when I was diving into all of this, I came across the work of the late Jewish rabbi and therapist. His name is Edwin Friedman. If you've read his book, you know it's an amazing work, very dense work. But his book was called A Failure of Nerve. And here's his premise. His premise is that our culture is built on a myth of progress. And the way we are all operating, we don't know this, but in our subconscious, we wake up every day with this hope for no problems. So we are believing in this utopian hope that there will be no problems with my kids today. We start the day, let there be no problems with my finances. Let there be no problems at work today. And we are striving to be able to attain that. And that's what we're shooting for. And here's what's interesting. Friedman said that just looking at the data, the facts, our finances are on the rise. The span of lifetimes that we can live is on the rise. Our technology is on the rise. Yet somehow, our emotional health and our relationships are on a decline. So he's like, just looking at the data, this is not equaling that. But this is our aim every day, but we're getting this. So he was studying synagogues, congregations, sports teams, organizations, families primarily, to try to understand what is the problem, what's the deal. And in his work, he lists out like 7 or 8 different elements, and I'm not going to go into all of them. And he doesn't list them quite like this little cycle I'm going to list to you, but I want you to see if you could find your daily reality in the cycle that Friedman speaks about. Because basically he would work with the family and he would notice that a tension would arise and everyone would react emotionally. So instead of responding to God, immediately there's a reaction that is popping off inside of us instead of responding to wisdom. And now we're all charged up on the inside. That would lead to blaming. Because, if you weren't around and causing all this stress, if they weren't doing this or they weren't doing that, then I'd be a lot more of a peaceful person. I'm not the person at fault, though. Blame rests elsewhere. But now I'm all stirred up, and I need a quick fix. And so now I'm looking to something else to be able to calm the internal anxiety, the outward rage, or the isolation I feel from being left out, or whatever it is. So I got to do something to distract myself. So what most of us do is we just go to Instagram and scroll. Or just that magical one-click button of Amazon Prime that makes everything feel better. Or like if you're old like me, we used to wait for Friday night on 7 o'clock for that show to come. And now we just watch the entire season in the rest of the day, okay? We just binge the whole season, okay? Or your quick fix might be much darker. But one way or another you're going to fix what you're blaming and what you're reacting to. And Friedman said this, our search for a silver bullet, unfortunately, it is eroding our resiliency. It's destroying our perseverance and our patience and our ability to be able to differentiate. Differentiation is a fancy psychological term for this is my emotion, that's your emotion. You have your emotions and they don't have to affect mine. My emotions don't have to infect yours. I can differentiate from you. How many of you are parents of teenagers or have had them at one time? Wow. We're going to do a ministry time for all of you at the very end because you know what I'm talking about. It's like your teenager says something, they do something, and your emotions start to rise with them. And then you rise, and they rise, and they rise, and then you realize, dang it, one of us is supposed to be the adult here. And I think it's me, right? But you were not differentiating, you were marrying their emotion. See, this is what Friedman is inviting us all into. So let me just make it very practical, because most of us wake up, the first thing we see in the morning is what? This. And before we made it to the coffee pot, there's the news, our 24-hour stream of encouraging words from our news sources, letting us know that everything that happened last night is for your good and God's glory. Okay, then we go out of that, and we're now in the living room, and now we're looking at Instagram to see all the things we were not invited to last night that everybody else was. While the coffee pot is warming up, we're now singing the ads of everything we don't have that we should have, that everybody else does have, but we don't have. And before the coffee has hit the cup, we have attuned to our surroundings instead of attuning to the presence of God. This thing's not evil. This thing can be awesome, or else I would not, Pastor, be having it and showing it in show and tell today. But the question is, do we know how to attune to the presence of God as opposed to those things that are tempting us and driving us a different direction? But Friedman said there was a way for us to get off this crazy train. And what he would do, and he would working in these situations, is he said he would insert a non-anxious presence. Let's say those words together. Non-anxious presence. Doesn't it just sound wonderful? Meaning, if he's working with a family, he would look for the one person who wasn't reacting emotionally, who could set a boundary, who had some emotional maturity, and he would build an entire plan around that person. Years later, he went back to go meet people in these organizations and families and congregations to see if his work and his thesis was actually working. For the most part, he was encouraged. About 80% of it was still working. He found that about 20% was not working, and he was disheartened, like, well, maybe my theory's not right. The more study he did, what he found out was that the person he had built his plan around, the non-anxious presence, had actually graduated and moved off to go to college, or had passed away and gone to be with the Lord. And now that presence wasn't there. It reaffirmed to him that you can actually break the curse by inserting a non-anxious presence. Now, here's what I want to ask you. Even though his work is now years old, could it be ever in history that people in society and culture need the people of God to be non-anxious presence wherever they go in 2023? Is there a time where we needed this more than right now? In the midst of a world and a culture that is doing anything but being a non-anxious presence, what would it look like? If Jesus followers didn't just know that shalom equals peace, but we actually knew how to meet shalom here and become a non-anxious presence inserted into the sports team that is anything but that, inserted into the lunch table that is anything but that, inserted into the in-law family dynamic that is anything but that. Thanksgiving might look different this year. Your life group might look different this year. Your text threads might look different this year. Your church might look different this year. So let's just say I said, in the name of Jesus, amen. Go with God and do not fear. And the sermon's over. What would you do? Some people are like, amen, I love this church. I'll come back next week. They're quick. You might do what I did when I first heard this. I got so excited. And I was like, I am going to go out this week and I'm going to try hard to be peaceful. And that worked for like 18 minutes until my second problem. And now I'm stuck. Point number 1, you cannot generate peace by willpower. Actually, put the word I in front of that, and everybody say that with me. 1, 2, 3. I cannot generate peace by willpower. You got to believe this at the soul level. Here's why. How many of y'all been in church a long time? How you define long time? Show me hands. What that means is there's a subconscious math formula that you live in that you don't even know you live in. And here's what it is. I'll go to church and I'll be given this information. And then I'll marry that with my willpower. And if I do that well this week, then I'll experience blank. Health, maturity, in our case, peace. But if that's the case, then the one with the most willpower wins and the rest of us lose. They start the podcast, they tell us what to do, and we all feel like failures that we can't do it. Or the one who goes to the right church with the right information wins the most. But information plus willpower actually does not lead to peace. But here's the deal. We actually do need great information. In a church setting, we need good doctrine, good theology as well. We need willpower, resiliency, perseverance in our world. We need that. We just can't we can't live with the mentality that those things are sufficient enough. If they were, then John 15, verse 4 and 5 would be erased from your scriptures, where Jesus says, abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. Meaning, just because Carl preached on this today doesn't mean you can go do it today. But I am the vine. You're the branches. And those who abide, remain, dwell. I love that your drummer today had the word dwell on his shirt. I was like, well, that's prophetic. In me, and I in them. They bear much fruit. They experience the fruit of the Spirit, which is, help me, love, joy, peace. Like, they get to experience that, but apart from me, you can do nothing. So I read this and I say, it's like Jesus saying, Carl, you can act more peaceful. You could start talking in a really soft, peaceful voice. You could learn an English accent because God always speaks better through an English accent. You could go get a bumper sticker that says, let go and let God. And then you would experience peace. Here's the deal. I could act more peaceful today, but I cannot become more peaceful. In order for me to become more peaceful, that happens down here at the soul level. And to get down here, to get shalom down here, then I'm going to have to meet with shalom. And it's going to have to be more than my time with God. It's going to be, do I know how to encounter him throughout the seconds of my day? This is not a personality thing. Make sure you hear this. Because the person you pointed to earlier that's so chill, I guarantee you if you went and talked to them, they would say, well, that's the demeanor you experience from me. But there is a gerbil wheel, a frenetic activity that is often baiting me to live in that every single day. So for our final moments together, this is typically the part of the sermon where a preacher turns it and says, so I'm going to give you 3 practicals, and so everybody take notes. I'd like to do the opposite. If you're taking notes or have anything in your hands, I'd like you to put that down for a moment. Put your phone down, put your journal down. We're not going to do that because I don't believe that information is going to change you today. I believe experience is going to change you because that could lead you to revelation, and that could change you. So Ellie's going to come out, and she's going to play, and we're just going to do a moment here together. We're going to just center the next few practices that we do around Psalm chapter 46, verse 10. Because I'm going to just let this be a moment where you get to encounter God. I love Psalm 46:10. Do y'all know this verse? Be still and know that I am God. I'll be exalted in the nations. I'll be exalted in the earth. I love this verse so much that when I first got into ministry as a youth pastor, we didn't have emails in those days. We had letters. And I would sign these letters. It would look like this. It would say, Psalm 46:10, Carl. I put this on everything. I want everybody to know the power of this verse. And all these teenagers started coming to me going, what does that say? And I was like, well, look it up. And they're like, I'm not going to look it up. So do I have to do everything myself? So I spelled it out and made the blunder of all blunders for my next letter that went to like 300 people when it said, be still and know that I am God. Carl. I am not exaggerating. You can ask my wife. She was one of the many that reached out to me to ask if I had attained divine status anytime recently. And when I caught this, I was like, I cannot believe I just did this. And, rookie pastor. Because I don't obviously believe that I'm like the Messiah. But if I'm honest, I probably carry more of a Messiah complex than I care to admit. Because every day I try to spend time with the Lord in the morning, and I love that time. But it's almost like I would spend time with God, and then I'd be like, in Jesus' name, amen. And then I'd pick up my backpack of responsibility and live like it's all on me. Like we all do this. You've been bowling or you've played golf. What do? You release the ball and then you just sit there peacefully, right? No, you're like just that way, as if you urging the ball is going to make it go that direction. And that's kind of what we do with our life. We're like, God, we love you. But about 18 minutes later, the problem comes. We're like, no, that way, that way, that way. So no longer at the emotional level are we able to experience the shalom that we're able to talk about at Life Group. So how do we get it from here down to here really is the question. And so what I'd like you to do is just interact with this verse. We're going to put it back up there, Psalm 46:10. We're going to interact with it in a few different ways and just try to make this very, very practical. Try to eliminate the bowler's curse, because David, obviously, there's a lot going on in the world when he's writing this. Just like there is in our world. He's like, ready, set, now slow down. Slow down. This is hard. But this physical stillness is reminding you, you're not in control. And so I encourage you, just close your eyes for a moment and just take a few deep breaths. And then hold it. And then release it. I want you to do that a few times. Might feel weird to do this with others around you, but just focus on God and just take a few deep breaths. And now marry that with Scripture. This time when you breathe in, just to yourself, I want you to say, be still and hold it. Feel that building up in your chest. And then release it as you say, you are God. Do that 5 or 7 times, just breathing in, be still, and exhaling, you are God. In a hurry. And I know this is hard to believe, this truth, but you acknowledge it, but this is getting it down to the soul level. We're not just like trying to be a hippie commune and do a bunch of breathing exercises together. This is you marrying Scripture, and you're reorienting your body's response when you're caring for your aging parents. Some of you are deciding about what college to go to next year, and that could just work you up. or financial strain, you're reordering yourself right now to be still, to release control, because he's God. Just another minute or so there. Keep breathing out, breathing in, be still. Exhale, you're God. Now look up here. What you're doing is you're practicing something that an old Spanish priest by the name of Ignatius of Loyola, he called it indifference. Now, we don't like that word indifferent, right? Be like, how do you feel about OU football? No, I'm indifferent, you know? You'd be like, can we please torch that guy? Like, right? Because indifference not a positive word to us. But remember, he was a Spanish priest, and so the translation probably didn't go right. It was probably less about just being, it's not like apathetic. It's more like, I am free at an emotional level from having to drive my life and have it go a certain way in order for me to experience peace. It's almost like your iPhone cord. It's like I am unplugging this. It's no longer in the wall. The plug is unplugged. And now I don't know where that's going to go, but I'm okay as I step away from it, trusting that this power is now in me. And I can be still and know that he is God. Because there's only really two ways for you to deal with your problems and your anxiety. One is just have no more problems. Not going to happen. So, I have to come to a place where life's not okay, the situation's not okay, but God's okay, and I'm okay that I'm with God. Sometimes I have to get over a lot of anger with God or disappointment, frustration to get there, to be able to release that outcome. So I want you to help me and do something else here. I want you to think of something that's stressing you out, a problem, a person, an anxiety-inducing situation. Probably didn't take long to get there. So go ahead and just hold that in your hands right now. Hold them out like this in your fists. Depending on your personality, some of you are gripping that pretty tightly. And that's okay. It's your body telling you this is what you do when something comes up. And I want you to close your eyes as you just think about that thing being in your hand. And remember, Gideon did not say, God gave me peace. He said, I got God. He is peace. This is Jesus saying, in this world, you will have problems. You will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. And I want to encourage you to learn a new phrase today. As you turn your fists over now, I want you to open them. Symbolically releasing that stress and say these words to the Lord, I abandon the outcome to you. I abandon the outcome to you. I'll do it again. Just turn it up. Hold that thing in your fist. Maybe it's a different situation, a different child, a different scenario. And then just turn it over. I abandon the outcome to you. And then we're just going to sit here for a few minutes. We're not in a hurry. We're not trying to rush through something. And we're just going to be in his presence. And I want you to physically just keep turning it over. Abandon that outcome. These words aren't magical, but you're practicing the release at emotional level from driving your life in these scenarios the way that you need them to go in order to experience peace. So let's just sit here in this moment. Continue to turn those wrists over. And I'll join you. You're not absolving yourself of responsibility or stewardship or intentionality. You're just making the choice at the emotional level to trust that God wants this in his hands and he'll drive the outcome, and that nothing will come to you today that has not already passed through his loving hands. So we're going to sit here another few seconds as you just abandon the outcome to God. Maybe about that one thing, you need to do it 10 times. Maybe there's multiples. Just a few more seconds here. Thank you, Lord. We're going to do one more thing together. You can look up. You might have to wake up your neighbor, and they fell asleep in practice one. Well, that's okay. Maybe that's the most important thing you needed today is a good nap. But I'd like to do one more thing. But I need you to understand something before we do this, okay? Because a lot of people don't understand what pastors do all day. So y'all just assume that we just go hide out, we read the Bible, and y'all just keep coming back on Sunday. And it interrupts our Bible, 7 days of Bible reading, okay? So that's totally understandable. So you might think, well, that's easy for him to say. He doesn't have a real job with real problems. And so we have real life problems going on over here. How do I intersect this? So what you need to understand is the things that we're doing right now. When I was learning these things, I was waking up every night at 3 a.m. with panic attacks. Nightmares, just terrorizing nightmares that I could not sleep. My last prayer before I went to bed at night was often, Lord, please don't make me go to sleep and deal with all this mess. And then I'd wake up and be like, I have to do this all over again. Fight this all day long, all this emotional strain, go to bed, deal with more nightmares, more panic attacks, more anxiety. So I was not just sitting around just encountering the peace of God. It was a war for what was going on in my soul. And most of the time what I would do is I'd get up and I would spend time with the Lord, and I'd put on worship, and I'd pray in the Spirit for a long time to try to break some of the back of some of this, and it wasn't breaking. My mom had gone to be with the Lord shortly before that. I remember going, Mom, I've used every trick you ever taught me, and it's not working, So if you're in heaven right now, tell God, help Carl. I was I'm stuck. It's not working. And I would usually read one psalm, one proverb, and one thing from the New Testament. So 3 chapters a day. And I encourage especially young people, do that. You need a broad reading of Scripture in order to understand the narrative of Scripture and to get that Word of God inside of you, okay? Colossians chapter 3 says, let the peace of Christ rule in your heart and your mind. Which means peace is not a kumbaya, mushy feeling. It's it comes and it conquers. But it's attached to the rest of that verse that says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. So a lot of us, we don't want to read the Bible, but we want to experience peace. One of the ways you're going to encounter peace is by inserting the sword of the Spirit into your war. But for me, I didn't need 3 more chapters of reading stuff to be able to do. I didn't need to read broadly in this season. I needed to read deeply. So oftentimes my time with the Lord was 1 verse, 5 verses, sometimes 1 chapter. And I would read it over and over and over. Not to get more information. I needed something to get down here. So we're going to do that together right now, okay? I'm going to read this verse out loud. When I do, I'm going to ask the Holy Spirit to point your eyes to 1 word or 1 phrase that's for you, okay? So whatever that 1 word or 1 phrase is, Holy Spirit, just let them see what they need to see. No, as I read this, just let God do that for you. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted in the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Now, what's that 1 word or 1 phrase that he pointed you to? once you have it, just close your eyes and just think about that word. Think about that phrase. Don't interpret it. Just let it begin to dwell in you richly. Just let it circle around inside of you. Do that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. For the sake of our time, I'm going to move us to this again. I'm going to read it again to us. And this time, maybe just take a minute to identify, what emotion does this bring up in me? Positive or negative, it doesn't matter. Or what situation does this bring to my mind? Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted in the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Is that emotion you're feeling right now, or is there a situation that's coming to mind that either resembles or doesn't resemble this verse? Now just let that word or phrase that was spotlighted the first time we read it, just begin to interact with that emotion. Begin to interact with that scenario. Maybe just even pour your heart out to the Lord about it. The scripture one more time, and this time look at it and just see, is there a promise, God, that you have for me within it? Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted in the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Is there a promise that he has for you? If so, take it and thank him for it. And if you don't see anything there, that's okay. Just begin to thank God for his presence in your life in this interaction you've had with him. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.